Welcome to GoJo and Golic. Mike Golic Jr., Mike Golic Sr., and Jesse Cofield holding it down for us in the DraftKings studio in Boston. We got a great show coming up for you guys. As always, make sure you download, subscribe, rate, review us, leave us a 5-star rating, and try and watch us live Monday through Friday, 8 to 10 a.m. Eastern, right here on the DraftKingsNetwork.com, DraftKings YouTube channel, Samsung TV Plus, Roku, and more. Our friend of the program, Jason Cabinda, fullback for the Detroit Lions, who are getting ready to move on and host their second playoff game for the first time in franchise history coming up this next weekend. Going to join us here in the second hour, take us through the incredible scenes at Ford Field. But let's not bury the lead. Dad is back. You are no longer an empty chair in a sad, dark casino. What's going on, Dad?
I am happy to be back, and I'm glad as I could be used as just a pawn in your guys' game of entertainment by showing my empty seat yesterday as I was battling Mother Nature and the trials and tribulations of travel that were going on in the ugly day that I had of no sleep and trying to desperately get back to be on this show, scraping and clawing to get there, and you guys basically mocked me. So I'm not going to lie, it hurt a little bit, and it hurt coming from my own son, that you would let that happen to me. Shameful.
So here's the thing is, I would feel bad were it not for this mitigating factor, because as I woke up yesterday, coming off of the first 4 games of Super Wild Card Weekend and all the stuff we have to look forward to, I'm thinking, great sports Monday. Man, how lucky am I get to sit here and chop it up with my dad. We get to talk about all this together. Jesse's fired up. We have no other guest plan because we want to spread it out, call ISO, and just do this thing. And then I wake up. I'm on the West Coast, so what is an 8 to 10 a.m. Eastern show is a 5 to 7 a.m. Pacific show for me. I wake up at 4 o'clock in the morning out here, and the very first thing I see is a text message from my father that says, "Hey, Mike, feel terrible, but not going to be able to make the show. I'm stuck in transit X, Y, or Z." And I look up and think, well, surely, my father has alerted the rest of the crew. They're already working on this since they've been up on East Coast hours. And I get over here to start doing the mic check on my end, and I hear one of our producers in my ear go, "Oh, it's weird. Senior hasn't dialed in yet." And the horror that started to cascade down me when I realized that my father had texted me and only me to alert the show staff that he was not going to make the show. So how do you plead on that count, Dad?
Yeah, going on like 25 years in this business, that was on me. I gotta pull the thumb and not point the finger. And again, behind the curtain that nobody cares about right now is I text you. I was on the runway in Dallas at little after 1 a.m, still thinking we were going to get out, and then seeing the realization that, and listen, this is something we can all deal with and have gone through. The realization that the pilot saying the co-pilot was going to time out. If we didn't take off in a certain amount of minutes, we were going to have to go back to the gate. Plus, there's this rule out there, as others that travel know, if you're away from the gate for more than 3 hours, they have to go back to the gate and give people a chance to get off the plane. And when they did that, they said the co-pilot's going to time out. So that's when I was texting you. And the reason I didn't email everybody else like I should have, your mother is not home, so I'm also was coming home to the dogs. And I had to rely on Ben and Sydney, my daughter and son-in-law, who have just had a baby of their own, to come up and watch the dogs. And Ben had done that, and Ben had left the dogs thinking I was going to get home at the normal time. Now I wasn't going to get home all night. I had to text them with a 9-week-old baby at 1 a.m, which is, Jesse, as I'm sure you could agree, was a horrific move that I didn't want to do.
Well, I'm sure they were awake.
Luckily Ben was doing a feeding, and he said, listen, after this feeding, I'll go back up there, because the dogs would have been walking around or sleeping or something so much out of their comfort zone. So Ben went back and spent the night with them. And then while the show was on, I was flying from Dallas to Salt Lake City. And again in Dallas, the plane left late because they de-ice there, and they don't know how to de-ice because they rarely have to de-ice. So I did the old sprinting from one gate to the next to just make my flight in Salt Lake City to get back here. Again, nobody cares about this, but anybody who's traveled long enough has gone through situations like this. It was the first time I got sleep yesterday was when I went to bed last night. It was one of those ugly travel days, but I'll say this real quickly. I wasn't bemoaning myself, because as I had to pick up lay on a slab of concrete in the concourse there, the amount of people with their kids and such, I mean, you just feel horrible as you have parents wheeling around 2 and 3 kids in this situation. And airlines still, not to go off on a tangent, but if it's Mother Nature, they don't give you squat. They don't give out anything for these families to get food, any kind of shelter. They just say Mother Nature, and everybody is just kind of wandering around like it's the apocalypse through concourses because it's 2 and 3 in the morning and they have absolutely nowhere to go.
I have to just quickly touch on something that you said. So it's 1 o'clock in the morning, and you're saying Ben had to go to your house because your dogs cannot sleep through the night alone?
No, our dogs have never been alone with no parent. Have your dogs? Do you have dogs that will... Listen, if dogs aren't used to that, I don't know what they're going to do. Jesse, if you got dogs... I got
a dog.
And they're not used to no one being home or being where they normally sleep, which is usually in our bed. Yeah, they're going to freak out. They may freak out. Yeah, I felt horrible for them.
I guess.
My God, do you hate animals?
No, I love.
You don't care about your pets?
I love my dog. I think in that scenario, I would be okay with him waiting until morning for an adult to come home. That he didn't need adult supervision in the night.
I think the best part about all of this, and then we will mercifully get on to the remnants of Super Wildcard Weekend, is my dad in all of this. My dad, who preaches accountability at every turn, has blamed both dogs and babies for his inability to text his work colleagues about him not being at work. So that's where we've arrived now at the level of thumb pulling with my dad. He pulled the thumb and then immediately shot 2 fingers at the most vulnerable sections of the population, the dogs that were home by themselves, and the 6-week-old baby that is my niece, Alex. So this has been riveting, and we appreciate it. Dad, we're glad that you're here. I'm a little upset that you've blamed babies and puppies. We're going to try and forgive that in the name of getting to the situation that you were coming from, because we thought you were leaving the biggest tire fire of the weekend in what happened with the Dallas Cowboys. And then the Philadelphia Eagles decided to play a football game last night. And I guess play should be used loosely, as they got their asses whooped 32-9 by the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And I'm not going to lie, Dad, we talked about this yesterday when Fitz was on. I said I can't give you a reason based on what we've seen for the last month and a half of why I would pick the Eagles in this game. I took the Bucs and the points like a coward instead of picking them outright, but the Tampa Bay Buccaneers went out there and did exactly what you'd expected, Dad. K-Dot and their tight end had a season high in targets and catches because they looked at the Eagles, said, you don't have any linebackers and your safety room is banged up. Guess where we're going to spam all night long? And they made it a living hell for them on that side. And on the other side, apparently the Eagles did not realize that the Tampa Bay Buccaneers were allowed to blitz. And not only were allowed to blitz, but do so at the 3rd highest rate in the NFL, because they never seemed to have a plan for it. Dad, which of these was worse, what you saw in Dallas or what you then turned around and saw from your old team in Philadelphia last night?
So I would say Dallas, because it was a slaughter. I mean, it wasn't as close as what the final score ended up being, and it was still a 2-score game. It was stunning. Let me get this stat really quick. It's amazing. For only the 5th time in the Super Bowl era, a division sent multiple teams to the playoffs only to have both teams never hold a single lead. Not just losing, but never hold a lead. The Cowboys never held a lead, and the Eagles never held a lead. So it's happened 5 times in the Super Bowl era. Happened this weekend. The last time it happened in 2021 in the teams, the Cowboys and the Eagles. So these two teams did it twice out of just 5 times in the Super Bowl era. Yeah, we can get back to the Cowboy game, but that to me was worse. This one, Mike, this one kind of followed along the lines of how Philadelphia was playing. Listen, this is a team that started 10-1, and look where they are now. They ended up the 5th seed, and they're packing up their lockers today. And a Hall of Fame center has called it a career in Jason Kelce, which we'll get to. So we kept the one thing you can't get fooled by is we can flip the switch. Players believe it. Players think we can get back to how we played. And that's what we all said. Well, if the Eagles revert back to how we normally see them, they're going to win this game. Easier said than done. Injuries at linebacker and the secondary have hurt them. Bad play has hurt them. If you want to beat Philadelphia, throw it in the middle of the field and then break 3 tackles because you're going to be able to do it every time. I mean, the tackling was horrific. The open receivers in the middle of the field and the tackling was horrible. I heard Ray Lewis was on with Eli and Peyton talking about that. Listen, as a former defensive player, we worked on pursuit drills every single day. Get the right angle. And you don't work on, and we tackled back then too in practice. Now you don't, and I get it. I'm not saying it in a way of the era now, but you just don't practice it now. So the tackling is as bad as it's ever been. But even worse, Mike, is the angles that players take. You have 10 other people on the field, and players don't know how to use that to their advantage when they're trying to tackle somebody. And because of that, you get free runners all the time, either horrible tackling technique or horrible tackling strategy on how you're going to do it. Now, give credit to the other team for doing what they did, but still, that has been an issue with Philadelphia. It was not fixed. And when you have a 53-man roster, depth can be an issue. So kudos to those teams that have next man up and come in and play well. Philadelphia did not get that from the rest of their roster, and that's why they're going home. And the other side of the ball, man, you're right. You have a ton of stats and a ton of things that tell you, a team likes to do this, a team likes to do that. And they like to bring pressure. How are you ready for that pressure? Do you just put your 5 guys on it and say, deal with it, or do you adjust to it? We should have known it was going this way when the Eagles have been stopped 3 times on the brotherly shove all year.
Yeah,
2
man,
times
bad vibes.
were yesterday. 2 times were yesterday. So kudos to Tampa Bay for stopping that. How Jalen Hurts takes that safety, I have no idea how he doesn't get rid of the ball on that one. So while we're going to dissect the Eagles, I guess I would just say this is how they've been playing. There is no switch flipping that goes on, and let's maybe instead, while we're dissecting the Eagles, because there's going to be changes there, let's also applaud Tampa Bay. They're led by the plucky QB of Baker Mayfield, who's just getting incentive after incentive as they keep winning and moving on, and now they get to go to Detroit.
Yeah, Jesse, Baker Mayfield, the first Buccaneer to throw for 300 yards and 3 touchdowns in a postseason game. Tom Brady just lived there. Like, what the hell is going on?
Just lived there for 3 years. Wasn't able to do that in any postseason games. And he had a crazy couple weeks, Baker Mayfield, not Tom Brady. He was fighting a rib injury from 2 weeks ago in that loss to New Orleans. Ankle injury he suffered in Carolina last week. So this man is hobbling along, right? So to give himself the best chance, Baker flew in his personal physiotherapist twice this week to help him work through the injuries. It limited his practice time, all this stuff. And after the game, everybody was on about how Baker is one tough dude.
He gutted it out. I mean, if you looked at him during the week, he was limping around. He wasn't practicing. He was getting a little better each day. Hopefully they didn't hit him too much. I know they got some shots on him, and they got 4 sacks. So he came back from that. He stayed with the plan. He never flinched. He made play after play after play, and that says a whole lot about him.
Yeah, because he's a dog. No, he's a super tough guy, incredible competitor. He's been doing everything he can to be out there with us, so it's awesome to see.
Obviously, the ups and downs that I've been through in the last few years, this one's great, but like I said earlier, our sights are set for bigger goals, and so on to the next one.
Guys, you heard Baker say what he's been through the past couple years. He's played for 8 coaches in 6 years. That's insane. So not only physically tough, mentally tough as well.
Yeah, Browns fans have to be sick watching this, considering who they've got under center coming back for them next year and the way he's performed, the fact that Baker's now moving on in the playoffs. And, Dad, it does seem like a guy who's done a lot of growing up. Baker was pretty brash, rubbed a lot of people the wrong way in college when he was at Oklahoma, and then came into the league tasked with trying to resuscitate a franchise that's been a perennial loser in Cleveland and was moderately successful, more successful than anyone we'd seen in quite some time. And that ended up not being good enough for a number of reasons. And as he's gone along now, he's gotten to that point in his career, Dad, where I think he's really, probably has a better understanding than most of what it takes to be a professional in this league when you cannot control the circumstances around you at all. And so now that he's landed in a place that has actually given him the reins and let him be the guy, there seems to be a newfound appreciation for it. And, Dad, you can appreciate a guy who was a first overall pick carrying late round energy, doing anything he possibly could to stay on the field because he doesn't know if he goes off, if he's ever coming back at this point.
So, lest anybody forget, it was Cleveland, the top pick, and then to Carolina, and then to the Rams, where he had that miraculous game after getting there on a Thursday and leading him down the field on a late drive there, but it wasn't going to be for good there. And now with Tampa Bay, Cleveland's done this a couple times with brash quarterbacks coming out of the college, right? Johnny Manziel and Baker Mayfield. Johnny Manziel didn't learn, we saw the documentary, self-admittedly didn't learn how to be a professional athlete and flamed out. And Baker Mayfield did learn. He got humbled, instead of I woke up feeling dangerous to, eating a lot of humble pie to where he is right now. And you're right. Teammates love this guy, works out with the old lineman, will drop his shoulder into anybody. So his play has been great, and he has resurrected what he has been doing. But let's look at the team and compare it to another team on what Tampa Bay has been able to do. I talked about this the last year or two when I was doing the Tampa Bay game, that they were going to have to pay the piper, right? They paid guys to keep this team together. After they won the Super Bowl, they re-signed every starter. They gave out money like crazy while they had Tom Brady. And you did the right thing to get the goal that you wanted. You won the Super Bowl. Then you were going to be left with cleaning up the highway. And that meant over $80 million in dead cap money they had to deal with, which means you got to go on a shoestring budget, which means you got to hit it right. Baker Mayfield, look at all the deals going out to quarterbacks. Baker Mayfield got a $4 million deal with incentives, which he's hitting, by the way. So the most important position, they hit on it for a guy who now, through the most touchdowns, 28 in the regular season, he has thrown in his entire career, and only had 10 interceptions because he had been a bit of a turnover guy as well, or got you into trouble guy, and you still kind of hold your breath if you're going to do that or not. Throws 3 touchdowns yesterday to no interceptions. It kind of reminds me of the Rams, right? They sold everything off to win a Super Bowl, and they did. And how have they come back from it? I know they just lost, but they made the playoffs. They did well in the draft. The Puka Nakuas of the world and guys on defense. They hit 3rd, 4th round, 5th round guys. So kudos to them for doing what they did. And kudos to Tampa to hitting it right on Baker Mayfield, because you had to dig yourself out of a pile of garbage with all the money you had spent on how you were going to come back from this. And here they are in the divisional round.
Yeah, 2 very different approaches, and it kind of shows you this is the boy math that you have to do in the NFL when it comes to the most important position. You can either, and we talk about this all the time, although I would argue we've seen more and more the effects of the rookie contract for quarterbacks mitigated some in the modern era, but it's you either have a cheap quarterback that's got to hit while everything else is getting the money, or you got to hit all around it. And the Rams or the Bucs, you're right, the most recent examples of burn the boats for the postseason prize, both have gone about that in different ways. Baker Mayfield is going to get extended, I'd imagine, there now and have a chance because, again, this Tampa Bay team's too good to meaningfully address this in any other way. And so they get to move on and continue this. And we'll talk about the Buccaneers, who are now going to go forward and get ready to face the Detroit Lions. And I'd imagine, I haven't checked the book this morning. In fact, let me check on the fly right now and see what the opening line is. The Detroit Lions open as 6-point favorites at home right now against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And honestly, Dad, I thought it was going to be more. Because I do think while this Bucs team has some good qualities, I think the Lions should feel pretty good about this matchup. They were going to feel good about either matchup coming out of that game, considering how banged up Philadelphia had been. But I do think that Detroit Lions team is primed to go out there and go back-to-back on playoff wins after going 32 years without one before.
Yeah, I agree. The fans there, boy, they're getting treated to a whole lot right now, and they should be feeling good about themselves.
They should be feeling good. We'll sort through the wreckage of a couple other fan bases when we come back here next. Got so much to get to. On a super wild card weekend that wasn't overly entertaining, we had one game of the 6 that was actually decided by a touchdown or less in the Lions-Rams game. The rest of them were blowouts, but were very giving in a lot of ways. Plus, we've got the interview process and get to talk about Bill Belichick interviewing for the Atlanta Falcons job and what the hell that had to look like. But Dad, talking about job openings, I've been amazed how quickly the mob has come for Nick Sirianni. And our former colleague Booker McFarland, I think, said it best. There has to be something that's gone on in that Philadelphia locker room behind closed doors that we don't know about yet. Losing 6 of your last 7 games, the change to Matt Patricia as defensive coordinator as a panic move towards the latter half of the season, and now what seems to be legitimate questions about Nick Sirianni's job. Like, Dad, do you think there's a chance that half the NFC East and the half that was the good half, the half that made the playoffs, could actually be joining the list of open candidacies here soon?
Well, listen, in an era of making quick, rash decisions, would it shock me? No, not at all. Do I think they should do it? No, I don't. I mean, this team, we have done nothing but talk about good things on this team. They've won a Super Bowl. They lost the Super Bowl, obviously, last year, but they were 10-1 before the downfall. So I'm not going to look at the last
10-1 and limping. Like, remember that 10-1 we all looked at and we were like,
agreed.
That doesn't quite feel the same as last year's 10-1, and we kept couching it as we haven't seen their best yet, and then it turns out their best just was never coming.
Yeah, I would be shocked if you did it this year. Now, you have another year like that next year, and I would say, yeah, that's probably in our world of firing people. It's one of those where, next year when we talk beginning of the season, we talk about who's on the hot seat. Nick Sirianni's name is going to come up, but I wouldn't do it now. I mean, are you ready to change an entire coaching staff? The way you work the ball on offense, the way, an O coordinator, what he's going to bring in and defense. Some people may say, yeah, maybe it's time to do that. Me personally, I would not be doing that. I am not one of those guys that is going to say, boy, we need to change this thing right away after seeing all the good or at least some of the good we have. Remember, there was no A.J. Brown in this game. Again, sure. I know he's been around while they've been losing, but he, obviously hurt his knee and wasn't in this one. So, no, I do not make this change. No.
And I think you're right. Like, we're going to forget because at some point you're out on the field. This was Baker Mayfield going through it years ago with the Browns where he played with a hurt shoulder. He told everybody, and we still didn't care when we judged him accordingly. And for the Eagles, you had unprecedented injury in the linebacker level and defensive secondary. You had Jalen Hurts playing banged up for most of the year, and that losing streak. You were missing Dallas Goedert for a long time and his importance to the locker room and down the stretch. Absolutely. Devontae Smith missed the last game. A.J. Brown missed this game. But, Dad, as far as the change, I mean, you are coming off, and part of the change that helped damn the Philadelphia Eagles was how important Jonathan Gannon and especially Shane Steichen ended up clearly being, the way they never meaningfully addressed the losses at linebacker level this offseason. That's more of a personnel issue than anything, but I guess that's why I think the firing is more about the context surrounding the job than it might even be Nick Sirianni. It's, hey, listen, we already had to make a bunch of change at coordinator last year, so what would be another voice coming in? Clearly, the defensive coordinator position is not going to remain the same after the job that was done on that side of the ball collectively. But, Dad, I do think this could be just as much about the pool of candidates that we have available right now. We've talked about it. This is an incredible pool of coaches, both former head coaches and up-and-coming coordinators, probably the best we've seen in quite some time. And I wonder if there's a thought process of, all right, when we stripped away the coordinators, we didn't necessarily like everything we saw from the head guy, and now we've got this opportunity to bring in some real studs potentially here. We might not have this opportunity again, and so maybe there's that bit of, and I've used this term a ton, usually pertaining to the Bears, maybe there's a worry about the opportunity cost lost if you go forward and all of a sudden stick with a guy when you've got these kind of candidates available.
Yeah, it's like it's like the quarterback situation, right? You've seen your quarterback be really good at times and then level off, and you say, okay, we see what he's done. Let's go for the, again, P word, potential of this young coordinator, or in the case of a quarterback, this Caleb Williams, who we're going to take number one, as we all think the Bears are going to do, and go on that. I get it. I get that's kind of the era we're in. I would not do that now. We know there's going to be some changes. Sean Desai was that D coordinator, but as you mentioned, Patricia ended up calling plays. Who was the old coordinator? I think it was Brian Johnson, the offensive coordinator for the Eagles. So I think there are going to be some changes when you weren't playing as good as you normally play, even though you were 10-1, and then you just fold. Not by effort, but by wins and losses. Now, again, you do have to throw in injuries there because they were decimated, but it happens every year to teams. I wouldn't do it. I would be surprised if it happened, quite honestly, to all of a sudden make this wholesale type of a change here. So if you're asking me, do I think it'll happen or not, I'm going to say no. I do not think it's going to happen.
I think it happens. I don't know. I'd agree. Like, my general operating procedure is, hey, give it another year, especially when you were just in the Super Bowl last year and you were just lauding Nick Sirianni for the last year and a half. Going back to the back half of year one, when he ceded control of play calling, when he adhered more to the ground game, which, by the way, they inexplicably just left on the table last night in another point of frustration. But I'd agree there. Mike McCarthy's another interesting one, Dad, because while I think he's absolutely going to get fired because this is Jerry Jones making the decisions, there was a pretty loud chorus of players on that team that stuck up for him in a way that I wasn't necessarily prepared for in Dallas, for a guy that had gotten the best out of Dak Prescott this season and now looks like he'll probably get shown the door because Jerry's 80-plus years old and is feeling his own mortality and wants to win before he goes.
So I am more willing to give a little bit of leeway to injuries, like the situation in Philadelphia where injuries certainly hurt them. In Dallas, this has been an ongoing process for how many years now of finding a way to get rid of Mike McCarthy, right? When are we going to fire Mike McCarthy? Even Jerry Jones, after Week 18 this year, the Monday after Week 18, asked about Mike McCarthy's job security. He said, we'll take it one game at a time in the postseason. And there was only one game, and it was an obliteration. As I sat there and called that, me and my partner Ryan Radke were up in the booth going, what the hell is going on? Just like everybody else was doing. So if Jerry was really truthful in saying we'll take it one postseason game at a time, there couldn't be more marks against Mike McCarthy. But you know how I am about this, Mike. To me, it's more about the players. Players can turn a bad game plan into a good game plan. Players are the ones that are on the field that have to and need to execute. But it's the coach a lot of times who obviously gets axed for it if those players aren't producing out there. The thought is get a coach in here who can get them producing. But as I've always said again, you're a professional athlete. If you can't get out there and motivate yourself and carry out your game plan, I'm not looking at a coach, I'm looking at me. But we know firing one is easier than firing 30. So, and this has been talked about for a while. So I believe it's going to be the end of Mike McCarthy, and I understand the players that are sticking up for him as well. This all just points to Jerry Jones just throwing his hands up and saying, you know what, it's just not happening.
I think this is more about not firing a different one versus one. This is about the players. This is about talent acquisition. You didn't have the dogs to hunt up the middle on defense, and that's a Jerry Jones problem as the guy that makes the decisions on the football operations. That's his side of things, and so he's not going to fire him for those mistakes. Mike McCarthy, I'd be more inclined to keep him than I would Nick Sirianni at this point because of what Mike clearly demonstrated to you as a play caller this season and the support that he's got there. So I'll be interested to see how that goes. I could see both of them being on the chopping block because there's been a lot of smoke. Like you said about Mike, we've been used to that, but I've been amazed at how seriously this has been bantered about in very short order about this Philadelphia Eagles head coaching potential vacancy.
And the thing about it is, things have to happen quickly, right? We talked about Belichick interviewing, which we'll get into. Jim Harbaugh is interviewed with the Chargers. You can start face-to-face meetings, I think, in 5 days, though. You can Zoom meet now, and you know there's always backdoor connections as well going on. So these are things that can't wait, right? These are things that have to move along if you're going to make a move because there is a list of candidates, and like any list, there's the top few that are sought after by more than a few.
Yep, we've already seen Jim Harbaugh interview with the Los Angeles Chargers. They got the first crack at him. We mentioned Bill Belichick being interviewed by the Atlanta Falcons, which, man, read that headline to someone from 5 years ago and watch their brain explode.
Welcome back to GoJo and Golic. After an epic snowstorm that moved the Bills-Steelers game to Monday, Buffalo is moving on after a 31-17 win. In honor of that, it's time for our surreal celebration presented by Ciroc. Ciroc champions your game day celebration with ultra premium vodka. And it was a surreal celebration by Bills fans after each touchdown as the crowd launched snowballs up into the air. They got to do it 4 times in the victory. Fans were out pregame, shoveling out the stadium for $20 an hour. Not nearly enough money, if you ask me. Couldn't get through it all, so it led to some awesome visuals throughout the game. Also some not so great ones, like when fans threw a snowball at George Pickens while he was trying to catch a touchdown. Regardless, pretty convincing win for Buffalo. Now they're going to host Kansas City, guys. And that's going to be Patrick Mahomes' first road playoff game ever in his career. Crazy.
Yeah. Oh, by the way, and what a chance to add to either incredible lore for the Buffalo Bills, who have turned things around at an unprecedented level. I said Freaky Friday since the time they saw the Eagles earlier in this season, where now they have stolen their powers, become the good football team while Philadelphia has crashed and burned. Or if the Kansas City Chiefs go to Orchard Park and win that game, it is going to break them. That is going to be, even in the Buffalo Bills' storied history of painful losses, in the modern era, obviously the 4 straight Super Bowls absolutely reign supreme. But in the modern era, what the Chiefs dynasty has done to this team, Dad, I don't know how they would go forward. We would probably see them make some rash decisions after that if it happened.
Yeah, that would be amazing, wouldn't it? But remember that we talked, as Jesse said, the 2 times that Buffalo had lost to Kansas City in this position in Kansas City. And remember, one of those years we ended up changing the overtime rules in the playoffs because of it, right? Seeing Patrick Mahomes go down the field and the camera always going on Josh Allen just standing there, never getting a chance. And the league was like, wait a minute, we can't have our stars standing on the sidelines without a chance to win, so let's change the rule. First off, let me just say kudos in Buffalo, how they got that field and everything ready. I know they hired people to come help out, shoveling and stuff, but it looked great. And for those tough people out there with the Twitter muscle saying they should have played the game 2 days earlier, let me just say you're all idiots. I mean, for even suggesting that. And it wasn't even the game we were talking about. It was the safety of people and first responders and what people needed to do in a travel ban and emergency. That was just a joke, what was going on with the tough guy Twitter thing a few days ago. But I love how they got that ready. It's supposed to be in the 20s for this game, which is going to be balmy. To be great temperature. And given what Kansas City just played in, this past, when they played, this is going to be great for both teams. So pretty wild. I'm still amazed when you think about it, when you just sit there, Mike, and think about it. This is Patrick Mahomes' first time he's getting on an airplane in the playoffs outside of getting on an airplane going to a Super Bowl.
It's an unbelievable testament to how dominant this Chiefs team has been. Also hilarious to think about, though, Dad, where we were with both the Chiefs and the Bills in the midway point of this season, how we talked about them, the Chiefs as a shell of what we normally see with this group, no one outside of Travis Kelce to catch passes on that team. The Bills were at 5% chances to make the postseason, sitting there midway through the season. And now they're both getting ready to once again play for a shot at the AFC Championship game like we're all very used to. For Buffalo, Dad, they did it coming off. You mentioned the Chiefs get a Miami team that clearly was not ready for the elements there. The Bills got a Steelers team that was without their best player in TJ Watt in this game. It seemed to damn them before it even really got started. And this game was, I don't think, as close as the score indicated. It was 21-0 before a blocked field goal put the Steelers in position to go down there and get their first score to end the first half. And it all just kind of felt like weird breaks for Pittsburgh along the way that got them in there. The big takeaway, though, for Buffalo, Dad, and I think the real issue, because they did what you expected. They spammed the linebacker level. They got the ball to their tight end and running backs, especially in the pass game. Josh Allen was a runaway freight train from hell as a runner in this game, which is what we all expected. A franchise playoff long 53, I believe, yard touchdown 52, scamper. 52-yard touchdown scamper. But, Dad, I think the biggest issue for Buffalo now is all of the injuries that started to take over in the middle of their defense. Ankle injury to starting nickelback Teron Johnson, who didn't return after being evaluated for a concussion. Cornerback Rasul Douglas left. Tyrell Dodson, their linebacker, left. And so you looked at the middle of that defense by the end of the game, and it was all backups in there, which holds against Kansas City means you're probably going to have a bad time.
Yeah, it's going to be tough. We saw the injuries that went on with Miami. Now, I didn't think Miami was going to win that game anyway. That was a true home field advantage for Kansas City in that weather, but they were desperate. I had done the game earlier when they played the Bills for the division title and all the injuries they had, and they added to it in that game, so they were beat up. And you look at like two teams, right, that were in the playoffs on how they finished the season. We talked about the Eagles being 10-1, finishing horribly, and it looked that way in the playoffs. Well, the Bills won their last 5 games of the regular season, and look how they ended the playoffs. Because I'm with you. While this turned into it's a 2-score win, but at some point, in the fourth quarter, it's a 1-score game. I didn't feel like it was that close either. I didn't feel like the Bills were in danger of losing this, though you're always one play away, right? And it was Khalil Shakiro had the 17-yard touchdown reception where he did a great job keeping his balance. But I'll also say, if that doesn't happen, they're still in field goal range to go up 2 scores. It was 24-17 at that point. They get the touchdown with 6 minutes to go to be up 2 scores. Even if they didn't get that, I think they get a field goal. Though in that weather, you never know. They would have still been up. They could have been up 27-17. And it's just tough to think of Pittsburgh making up that difference. Though they did make a nice run to make it a 1-score game. I'm completely with you. I didn't think the Bills were in danger of losing this one. They've been living on the rushing attack, especially of James Cook as of late. He averaged almost 4.5 yards a carry in this one. They had 179 yards for the game, though, again, 52 were on that run by Josh Allen. But they've done a real good job. They had 34 runs and 30 passes. I mean, you look at that, and that's what an offense wants to do. I don't even care if you're a pass-happy offense. You would still rather run the ball and control the game and the clock running the ball and have a split like that.
I think most importantly for the Bills, too, you can't let them win the turnover battle. Like, Pittsburgh had 2 early turnovers, should have been a third, by the way, and Josh Allen had none for just the 4th time this entire season. So if you get that good version of Josh Allen that's not going to give you the dumb turnover, you're almost always doomed, and that's before you realize that TJ Watt's out and you have Mason Rudolph starting games, which makes this even more inexplicable. Mike Tomlin, after the game, got asked about his contract and his future in Pittsburgh, and gave us this beautiful gem of a clip.
Anyone?
Mike, you have a year left on your contract.
Mike Tomlin now overtaking the LeBron James suitcase clip for the new people storming out of situations reaction meme. But, Dad, it is interesting to think about, and I've seen a lot more people comfortable with bringing up Mike Tomlin's name as someone who could be on the chopping block in a way that I just don't understand. That guy got you to 10 wins in a playoff appearance with Mitch Trubisky and Mason Rudolph having to start games for you at quarterback in a season where you had to fire the offensive coordinator. I feel like Mike Tomlin's the kind of guy that gets to call his shot of when he's out there in Pittsburgh, but maybe I'm just Tomlin pilled at this point because I spent 6 months there.
This is, to me, is crazy. We even heard former Steelers saying maybe it's time for him to move on. I couldn't disagree more. What he gets out of a team, remember Cam Hayward was out for a decent amount of the year as well on defense as well, and you don't have TJ Watt in this game. You use 3 quarterbacks. You know, we talked about teams that have gone further, like Cleveland using 4. Use 3, including Mitch Trubisky, and then obviously Mason Rudolph after Kenny Pickett had been injured. So I'm with you. Why? And I know time runs out for everybody, but still the longevity, in case those have forgotten, since 1969, there have been 3 coaches. That is it. 3 coaches for the Pittsburgh Steelers: Chuck Noll, Bill Cowher, and Mike Tomlin. That is all. And by the way, they've been successful to the point of the first 17 years as the head coach, he's had a winning season. That's a record. It's not a record for all time. I think Bill Belichick has 19 and Landry 21. But there's no way, Mike, I'm making a change there.
No, I think you might have to think about making a change at quarterback finally. I don't think the Kenny Pickett experiment worked out. Certainly you've got to address offensive coordinator, but I think Mike Tomlin should still be the man with his hands on the wheel come next season. Dad, will be remiss if all of this, super wild card weekend talk, and we will get to taking stock of everything coming off of super wild card weekend. The questions facing the winners, the questions facing the losers. Coming up in just a little bit, we also have Jason Cabinda from the Lions who's going to come and give us the winner's perspective from inside a locker room that's been searching for it in a long time in just a little bit. But we got the big news this morning reported by Adam Schefter over at ESPN that Jason Kelce, the longtime veteran center for the Philadelphia Eagles, the host of the New Heights podcast, was telling teammates Monday night in the postgame locker room that he is in fact retiring. You could see Kelce at the end of the game, really emotional, a lot of camera shots of him. Fletcher Cox, the core of this veteran roster, him, Brandon Graham in there too, of guys that have been around for both the Super Bowl win, the next Super Bowl run, everything in between, and had been the faces and leaders of this organization. But Dad, Kelce, a guy in the middle of it, former 6th round pick at 191st overall, that had really been what felt like the heart and soul of this team, and a guy that really, place that you would know in this Philadelphia fan base and market, really seemed to embody all of the things that they love about their athletes.
I mean, the one thing about Philadelphia is, man, they love a player if he gives, obviously they love a great player, but if he gives incredible effort and, carries a lunch pail. There may not be, in all the years and decades of Philadelphia sports athletes, a better lunch pail carrying vision than just put a hard hat and a lunch pail in the hand of Jason Kelce and have him walk down the street in work boots and a flannel, and he would fit right in with everything there is about Philadelphia. I mean, 14 years he just finished. He is unbelievably tough a natural-born leader. And, boy, highly emotional guy, too. How about when he was doing the show with Travis, and Travis, ripped on him about a mistake he made. And Jason actually got up and left. He said his last line was, "I need a minute," and took the headphones off and left. I mean, dude carries things with him. I mean, so emotionally and physically, Hay has to be spent because a lot of people thought he was going to walk away last year. This is a guy where that group, there's not many at that group, the center position, that have been as successful. There's only 4 others that have had at least 6 All-Pros. That's the great Jim Otto, Dermontti Dawson, Jim Ringo, and Clyde Bulldog Turner. I love the fact when you get a player back in the day, and this is in the 30s and the 40s, when you just live on a nickname of Bulldog Turner. So those are the only other centers who had, minimum 6 All-Pro years. And he's walking into the Hall of Fame without question. He should be an absolute first ballot Hall of Famer. But, boy, what a player.
Yeah, I mean, the gold standard for undersized offensive linemen in my lifetime as a former undersized offensive lineman, Jason's listed at 295. I can assure you at this point in the season especially, that man is nowhere close to 295 pounds. And, his journey going from former walk-on at Cincinnati to a guy that ended up becoming one of the most important figures in the modern Eagles franchise. He's one of the most gifted athletes at the position. What he's allowed this offensive line to do. He came in under Howard Mudd, who's the famed offensive line coach that was with the Colts for so many years. Obviously finishes with Jeff Stoutland, who you saw him embracing on the sideline. He's had great mentors, Dad, but you're right. He's had the attitude, approach, and demeanor that can give you greatness even if maybe you're not the most physically overwhelming player to ever lace him up at that position. So you're right. He's going to be a first ballot Hall of Famer, a walk-in gold jacket, and a guy who I'd imagine is never going to have to pay for a beer around the city of Philadelphia ever again, even if he was at this point.
Let me quickly say, I just looked up because I wasn't sure, and I'm not sure where the stat. Mike Webster had 6 first-team All-Pros.
Okay, yeah, well. I was gonna say, so Schefter put out that stat, which is why I took him at it. But I texted you and Mom this morning, and I said the fact that Mike Webster, Dwight Stevenson, a lot of the names you think of as the Hall of Fame caliber greatest of all time centers, because I mean, Dad, that's the conversation JC's in now, right? For arguably the best center to ever play the game, or one of the best centers to ever play the game.
Yeah, for Dwight Stevenson, who I played against, and was the best at leverage I've ever played against. Ever. I mean, just
would
incredible.
You say that would be a good comp for Jason, by the way, Dad? Because Dwight Stevenson was not a big guy. Was he? No. Wasn't a huge guy by any means.
No, he was not. His leverage, and he played basically just no tape, anything, no gloves. He just played.
The mark of a psycho.
His leverage, it was one of those, if I kept my head above water on him, I was happy. Because you have seen him throw large human beings because of leverage, just like a wrestler. He was a 4-time first-team All-Pro. Mike Webster was a 6-time first-team All-Pro, 2 on the second team, so Webby belongs in that conversation. Now, Mike Webster played in a little bit of a different. It was a trapping offense, block backs, and things like that. I played against them. I was always an outside backer. I got to the Houston Oilers and played nose tackle. And the first time I played against the Steelers, what a lesson that was of getting whooped with Mike Steeler and the rest of those guys. And I remember shaking his hand after the game. He said, "Good game, Mike." I said, "Good game." I said, "You guys kicked my ass all over the field." He said, "Ask your brother Bob how the first time went because my brother Bob was a linebacker in New England, then went to Cleveland and was a nose tackle. And the first time he played against that, I mean, you just don't know where you're going to get hit." So, yeah, I mean, that is Jason Kelce, undersized center, toughness, technician. He belongs in the conversation with the greatest centers to play, and he'll put on that gold jacket for it.
And I thought a really cool note from Jeff Schwartz when it came to Jason Kelce and how he developed, because I mentioned he was, Tom Brady-esque. He was the 191st pick in the draft. He wasn't highly sought after, and all 6 of his all-pro teams came in his final 7 seasons. So the back half of his career, meaning he didn't come in and wasn't a dominant force right to start his NFL career. It built to this point where now, day in and day out, year in and year out, he was one of the focal points. He was one of the guys you looked at, and that was before we had the most famous podcast in sports, before we had the documentary on Amazon Prime where people thought he was going to retire after that. All these ways that I think people have come to now know Jason Kelce as not just maybe Taylor Taylor Swift's future brother-in-law, but all these things in a helmet sport of a guy that is now a known face, especially in a position like center, Dad, where usually the Mark Schlereth of the world, all the offensive linemen I came up watching, you hid from the media limelight. You didn't run to it like this. So this is decidedly abnormal in almost every way for a guy who really ascended to new heights, pun fully intended, once he put on that Mummers costume at the Eagles victory parade.
Yeah, I don't think he's a guy that sought attention, but when he got it, he embraced it. Hence, again, the Mummers outfit and the podcast with his brother now. I don't think that's something he would have, said to his agent, hey, go get me some of these things. I want to be out in front of the camera all the time. But I think since the camera was going to be there, he learned how to embrace it very well.
Yeah, he said at the beginning, I remember when he was doing the podcast, he was nervous about it affecting the way that people around Philadelphia perceived him because of the respect that he's earned with his play and the thing that he was there to do, which is try and help that organization win football teams. And Dad, you know this as someone who was, media inclined and a big personality, despite maybe not being, as good a player as Jason Kelce. There's always a different tolerance for that stuff too, depending on your level of play. An organization is a lot more willing to support your endeavors off the field when you're balling out on the field. And for Jason Kelce, what that allowed him to do, both with the podcast, but think about the Christmas album that I just saw, the money that came from that, over $3 million donated to local charities around the Philadelphia area, because Jason and the all linemen decided, hey, we're so good and we want to do something fun. We're going to make a bleeping Christmas album 2 years in a row that's going to chart and do numbers and help people out and give back to this city in a way that most other people, quite frankly, wouldn't be able to get away with not being as good.
Yeah, and by the way, if you have not heard it or got it and the money goes to a great cause, you should, because the voices on that are amazing. And you're 1,000% right as far as doing things off the field, because I did things off the field in Philadelphia and I got looked at with a side eye because, again, I was an average player and they're like, you should be spending your time doing something else, when all the things I did on my day off. I didn't affect my preparation at all, but I'm not the player that these guys are that are doing it. So you're right, it is perceived differently, and they could do a lot of good with that pulpit, and that's exactly what Jason Kelce has been doing.
Yep, that is the Jason Kelce story overall. So if this is the case, and we'll wait to hear it from Jason himself on the podcast, I'm sure this week, congratulations to one of my favorite players to watch in my lifetime and one of the best centers to ever play professional football on what has been an outstanding career.
Welcome back to GoJo and Golic. The divisional round is set, so here's how things look. You got Houston, Baltimore, Chiefs, Bills, Bucs, Lions, Packers, Niners, and guys, we already have some, lines to look at here on the DK Sportsbook for these. Number 1 seeds, heavy favorites in the next round, okay? Baltimore, 9.5-point favorite over Stroud and the Texans. San Fran, 10-point favorite over Love and the Packers. Chiefs, Bills, your closest game odds-wise with Buffalo, a 2.5-point home favorite. So, guys, a lot of questions after this weekend, whether you won, whether you lost. Let's start with the teams who are actually moving on. What do we think of these matchups? I mean, I'm excited.
It is interesting to look at because I'm excited too. And boy, oh boy, we talked at the beginning of the year about the difference in quarterback level between the AFC and the NFC overall. And Dad, looking at these Final Fours, the Final Four quarterbacks in the AFC, Lamar Jackson, the likely MVP, Josh Allen, his likely biggest competition, Patrick Mahomes, the best player in the NFL, and CJ Stroud versus the quarterbacks in the NFC, Brock Purdy, Jared Goff, Baker Mayfield, and Jordan Love, who had a phenomenal season, but a very different group. A lot of former number 1 picks who were on separate teams. Mr. Irrelevant, Jordan Love, a guy who had gone through the turmoil of that Green Bay quarterback room. It's a very interesting look at how the other half lives.
It is, and you have to look at the home fields, and will it affect anybody? Obviously, Detroit is in a dome for Tampa Bay. San Fran's on the West Coast, so you're not going to get any kind of blizzard. That's luckily, fortunately for me, the game I'm doing. I've been very lucky.
Yes,
I got the game in Dallas, which was in a dome, even though it was 0 degrees outside, but it was in a dome, and now I get to go to San Francisco for the Green Bay game. Detroit, again, it's inside. Buffalo, it's going to be 20-some degrees. I just looked at Baltimore. It's snowing there now, but on Saturday it's supposed to be 25. You're getting a dome team there in the Houston Texans. But it doesn't look like that is going to affect them too much there. But it's a great point about the quarterbacks, because that's what we live on in this league, is the quarterbacks and the matchups. How many people without a dog in this race are rooting for Houston to make this miraculous run, right? They have to be it has to be Houston in the AFC and Detroit in the NFC. Detroit, just the fact that they have been so inept for so many years, and here they are hosting their second playoff game in 562 years. It's been ridiculous for them. So how much people are digging them, and how much people are raise an eyebrow at Houston and what they're able to do, even though this is going to be a tall task against Baltimore and Lamar Jackson. But for CJ Stroud, the offensive rookie of the year, what he's going to have to deal with that Baltimore defense.
So I do think it's interesting to consider those two teams side by side, because they've both got the young hot quarterback that's burst onto the scene. Now, one did it his rookie season in CJ Stroud, and the other had to wait his turn in Jordan Love. And Dad, I think for all prospective teams out there who are looking to make hires this offseason, this is why the stakes feel so high, because both of these teams give your fan bases hope. One was able to do it and microwave it in an instant. You hired the right coaching candidate in D'Amico Ryans. You got the right draft pick in CJ Stroud. Will Anderson Jr. not far after him in the first round, and it seems to have immediately altered the course, the vibes, everything around your franchise. The other is arguably more impressive, even given what we've seen from so many teams, Dad, who have had Hall of Fame quarterbacks depart, the New England Patriots, the Pittsburgh Steelers, and what they're going through right now, to immediately replace it with what, at the very least, Dad, in Jordan Love, is a high-end NFL starter, like a guy that's capable of being the reason you win games. Both of these teams are allowed to give fan bases unrealistic expectation about what a franchise is able to do, either dismounting from a bad situation in Houston or coming off of yet another Hall of Fame tenure in the Green Bay situation.
I'm telling you, Mike, what they have done, do they know how to transition quarterbacks or not? It's been incredible. But so he's come along, because he was shaky early on, but his maturation process of eyes downfield, sliding in the pocket, he got so smooth, as to the point we talked about before this game, this weekend, the last 8 games of the regular season, 18 touchdowns, just 1 interception. But here's the amazing thing to me, Mike, as he's a first-year starter, look who he is throwing to. Jaden Reed, who set all kinds of records as a rookie. Dontavian Wicks, rookie. Your tight ends, Tucker Kraft, rookie. Luke Musgrave, rookie, who started the year, then got hurt. Kraft came in, did well. Musgrave's back. And now they have a 2 tight end set, which they've been loving. Throw in Romeo Doubs and Christian Watson, 2 second-year guys. Last week in their game, Mike, they had the 4th youngest playoff team all time since the merger in 70. And the last youngest team before this, I believe, was the 74 Bills. So they have basically rebooted, and look at how successful they've been with these young receivers. The rookies so the first and second year receivers, there are all kind of stats I read I went over in this game that they won against Dallas of how successful they've been. And the Triggerman Love has come along so well in helping this. It's amazing. But quickly, Mike, to the defensive side, because it was the antithesis of what we saw in the Philadelphia game. That defense missing tackle after tackle. And this Green Bay defense, their D coordinator, Joe Barry, has been under fire all year that the mess just wasn't there, that there was going to be a change there. They hadn't played great all year. And then toward the end of the season, they started playing better. And I'm telling you, Mike, what they did on short passes against Dallas and making open field tackle as Philly was missing tackle after tackle, Green Bay was making those tackles. So to me, already in the early look at the matchup, the best yards after catch team in the NFL the last 2 years, San Francisco. So this Packer defense is going to be tested yet again on short passes that go long, which San Francisco does so well, and how well Green Bay tackles after the catch. So that's a matchup right out of the gate that I'm looking forward to.
So, Dad, of the 2 we talked about with these quarterbacks, Houston taking on the Baltimore Ravens, you mentioned you've got the Packers and San Francisco. I know you can't pick that game, but even on face value, which of these quarterbacks do you think has a better chance of actually pulling the upset? I'm inclined to lean Green Bay's way just because of how Baltimore has looked the last month of the season.
Well, I'm going to lean Green Bay's way because I think they have a better running attack, right? A.J. Jones, he's been playing.
Aaron Jones, A.J. Dillon.
I'm sorry, Aaron Jones. I'm thinking A.J. Dillon, who didn't play in the last game. Maybe he'll be back for this one. We'll see. He's had a couple issues, including a thumb. But Aaron Jones has been money, and especially against the Cowboys. He has continued now. He's played 4 games against the Cowboys and had over 100 yards in each of those games. He's been money the last 3 regular season games. He was over 100 yards and did it again in this playoff game. So I think that they have a better situation running the ball. I also think Jordan Love has 2 tight ends and the rookie tight ends to bail out at times. And as I mentioned, the younger receivers, he has more to work with than I believe C.J. Stroud does. Remember, because Tank Dell is out, and while Nico Collins is back and playing, I think Jordan Love, maybe surprisingly, maybe they're along early in this process, like we think Houston is, maybe along a year or so early, but kudos to both of them. I think Jordan Love has more to work with on the offensive side of the ball. Going into the game, the Packers' offensive line has given up just 30 sacks. I think that was number 3 in the league. So I think overall, Jordan Love has more around him than C.J. Stroud has.
And remember, this is poetic. The first game that C.J. Stroud played as a pro in the regular season on the road against the Baltimore Ravens. So they lost that game 25-9, and now they get to come back full circle and try and make that happen. Those are going to be incredibly fun to watch. I'm with you. I lean Green Bay for a lot of the said same reasons. I'm going to be curious.
I'm not leaning either way, just so we know. I'm not leaning anyway.
Dad's predicting a very competitive game for theirs. The other ones that are interesting, Dad, on the winners bracket side is the Kansas City Chiefs. I think for them and for the Bucs, there are questions of how much better are they than we saw in the regular season versus was it just good matchup, wrong team at the right time for that team? Because Kansas City got a Miami team that was banged up and clearly not built to play in the kind of environment that Kansas City was able to find success in that game. And the Buccaneers got the worst version of the Eagles that we've seen in the last however many years. And I think for the Bucs, There's a lot more reaching we're going to do on them. This Kansas City team, I mean, Donovan Smith getting back healthy at the right time at left tackle is big for them. We know the defense, especially in the postseason with Spags, can muster up some really impressive game plans. And with Patrick Mahomes, the Rashee Rice thing is now solidified. We've got the answer outside of Travis Kelce. And against a banged-up Bills defense right now, Dad,
right,
while they can get home with 4, which is, I think, the kryptonite or what you need most against this Chiefs offense because you can't blitz Mahomes, I do worry a little bit now about the middle of that defense against some of what the Chiefs do best.
Well, the injuries, and we saw the injuries with Miami against the Bills in the last regular season game and who they didn't have available against Kansas City. Now the Bills, on the flip side, go through that in their game and their win over Pittsburgh with some injuries. We keep saying it, though, Mike, is there enough weapons for Mahomes who can create so much? It is such the Travis Kelce, Rashee Rice show, right? I mean, that's it. 8 receptions for Rice, 7 for Kelce in that game. The next closest was Justin Watson with 2. Now, I'll continue to say Isaiah Pacheco is the hardest runner in the NFL. He is just a mean runner, and I love watching him carry the ball because that man rarely goes down with one guy hitting him. He is fun to watch. Is that enough? Right? But we've said that all year for them, and let's also be honest, they have not had one of their best regular season years.
No.
And Buffalo is playing at a high level right now, and quite honestly, a lot of that has been rushing the ball with Cook and with Allen. And their O-line, I know they got one dinged up. I think Dawkins got dinged up in this last game a bit. Their O-line had been together. Their O-line had been one of the more, had the most continuity, one of the most continuity-filled O-lines all year. So that's the one thing we've wondered about with the Chiefs is the one thing I'll continue to wonder about. Is there enough on offense? Defensively, we've seen him play good, and we've seen him play great. So, which one will that be there in containing Josh Allen?
Especially against the run. That was an area Miami just wasn't able to exploit that
right,
could have been there for them. The matchup I look for right out of the gate, we'll have plenty more time to talk about this, Chris Jones against their rookie guard, Osiris Torrance, who's had some struggles at times this year at that right guard spot. How is Spags going to try and use that to their advantage at different junctures of this game? We'll have plenty of chances to talk more about the winners, but Jesse, let's get some people that might be experiencing a little bit of heartburn on the other side of this and talk about the losers and their prospects going forward coming off Super Wildcard Weekend.
Yeah, it's, these losing teams have a lot to digest, right? Okay, so it's our Yums and Tums segment because a loss is always tough to keep down here, okay? Sponsored by Tums. With Tums Fast Heartburn Relief, your favorite foods are never a gamble. So Dolphins, in particular, could use an antacid after their loss to the Chiefs in the frigid weather of Kansas City. However, fans of both teams were actually struggling with their frozen beverages over there during the game. It was a sight to see. Guys, this is all to highlight the difficult conditions in KC. Difficult putting it mildly. It was a tough one to swallow for the Dolphins, who probably feel like, things may have gone down differently in normal conditions, perhaps. But guys, going into that game, Tua was 6 for 13 in temperatures under 70 degrees, 0 for 4 in temps under 40 degrees. So the writing was kind of on the wall here.
Yeah, I saw, I believe it was Daniel Jeremiah who brought this up, discussing Tua's future with the Dolphins. Dad, they're, for all intents and purposes, a dome team in the way that they want to operate, right? This is a Miami run team that's got a really complex, great run scheme because of Mike McDaniel and his background as the run game coordinator in San Francisco, but it's by no means a downhill bruising attack that would have been built for conditions like this. And so, you got them in that moment. They looked out of sorts. They looked off kilter, credit to the defense and Spags and what they did, but it also played into the absolute worst parts of Miami in the environment around here, and it cost a lot of people about $15 on beers that they had to lick, which sucks.
Can you imagine, now you experienced this once in seeing a team, and it happened to be from the same state, when you guys played in the Sun Bowl, and it was unbelievably cold, and you played the U, and Miami wanted no part of being there. Again, it was a bowl game that had no, it wasn't a playoff game, but still, as you guys started beating them, you could just see they just wanted to get warm. I wonder at what point in this game, as it was, 16-7 at halftime, And Miami didn't score another point. Then it was 19, then 26. 26-7 with 11 minutes to go in the game. I wonder at what point Miami's thought process was, I just want to get warm. We're not making it back in this game because it was so cold there. I had never seen, I'd seen a helmet break, but a part of a helmet pop off like it did on Patrick Mahomes' helmet, where the actual part of the helmet
it shattered. It shattered. His helmet shattered. I've never seen that before.
And it was interesting. I was riding in the elevator for my game in Dallas, and the independent concussion doctor was on the elevator with me, right? And we were talking about how cold that game was. And I actually asked him, I said, if someone got hit like that, and part of that helmet flew off, could you, as the independent doctor, say, well, did that happen obviously because of the cold, but had to be a hard hit as well? Could you pull Mahomes off the field? Could you pull somebody off the field for that? And he said, no, we could not unless we saw him stumbling. We can't say, oh my God, what a hit, it broke the helmet. We can't pull him off the field for that. I just thought that was an interesting little sidebar because I had the guy there. I figured I'd ask him. But, man, for Miami, like I said, how much were they just thinking about a warm cup of soup or a hot shower?
I can tell you exactly when it happened. First time they had to tackle Isaiah Pacheco. Being out there in the cold's bad enough, having to tackle a man who is somehow more ferocious than that cutting minus 30-degree wind would absolutely have been the breaking point for me. Quickly, Dad, for Tua Tagovailoa and his future, Chris Greer, their GM, came out and said they've had conversations this offseason. They want to keep him there long term. Would you sign him to a market-setting deal?
Absolutely. Where else you can go? I mean, you have weapons. You have Tyreek Hill and Waddle, and that certainly helps you. With between Mostert and Achane, they have the running attack as well. Yeah, I mean, how could you? I don't know how you could feasibly say we're going to turn away from this and start over at the quarterback position and where they were.
I'm not saying start over. I'm saying you could take him. He's got his fifth-year option they've already picked up. You've got the franchise tag after that. I'm saying you've got other options besides pay him market-setting money that's going to affect the way you put weapons around him, which he clearly needs.
Well, I think you do that to get yourself squared away, to know what you have then to set up the rest of the team. Because you look forward 2, 3, 4 years of where the money you're going to be spending and what you're going to have. I think you take care of that right now. Get him that deal, know what your parameters are, and go from there.
So we are going to have that to chew on all offseason because I'm a little less sure than you are based on what we saw in some pivotal moments down the stretch. But that being said, Dad, there is one fan base dealing with a lot more heartburn than the Dolphins or anyone else, and that is still the Dallas Cowboys. So much so that they're alumni. They're very proud alumni, guys that we've seen put on gold jackets, all seem to be going through it this weekend. This was the entirety of what we saw the Dallas Cowboys do to their esteemed alum over the weekend.
Every single one of you, you get your rear end in there and you play the way you know how to play. We can win the game.
Oh, Dad! No! It's over! It's over!
I can't believe we lost. God, ain't nobody else, man.
28 great years, 29 and counting. Congratulations, Green Bay.
I said run the ball.
Congratulations, Green Bay.
I'm sure we won't have to look to y'all.
Got another Romo on our hands. Choke like a...
No more Dak Prescott.
Put my damn championship on the table.
Look what's happened to you, Dak.
ASAP, new quarterback.
Dak, get him out of here. 12-5. Who cares when we lose like this to the freaking Packers?
Put your damn championship on the table. That's all we have, and you couldn't do it.
Fans are left disappointed once again.
Hold it. Go.
Oh, my God. Outstanding work by super producer Brandon Newman on that one. Dad, I legitimately thought Jimmy Johnson was going to cry on air on Fox giving that halftime pump-up speech.
I mean, this is one where we've seen that we have the sample size, right, of them doing well in the regular season and just not doing it in the playoffs. And even if they had won that game, which everybody expected they would, they were then heading to a divisional round where they've lost their last 10. So it's like a Cowboy fan can never feel secure in the playoffs. And as I said before, even before the game, I said, be careful. If this starts to go bad, this starts from the top down of Jerry Jones of how tight this team might get if things aren't going their way.
Tight can't be the description for the Dallas Cowboy fan broken television budget in the playoffs, clearly. Dad, the Dallas Cowboys, we've talked so much about their demise, and for them and the Eagles to be twin flames in this is, I don't know if it's poetic, but it sure is something right now. Is both quarterbacks, by the way, getting questioned a fair amount. Dak Prescott, who's due $60 million next year against the cap and has some complicating situations. But, man, Jalen Hurts taking some heat coming off of last night as well, as I think Philly fans have sort of soured on that stoic nature that for so long was, this maturity, great leadership, and now is not nearly enough emotion for them, which is pretty wild. But, Dad, you talked about something you saw at the beginning of the Cowboys and Packers game that stuck out to you on the other side of that with what Matt LaFleur, whose name we haven't said nearly enough in this conversation, has done.
I was so impressed with what do we normally see, people don't care about it much, the coin toss, right? And you win the coin toss, what do most teams do? They defer. They say, give the other team the ball, we'll take it in the second half. It's not a big thing, right? Okay? But I thought this was. Matt LaFleur and Green Bay won the toss and took the ball, which I think the thought process was, let's get our running game going. Let's start to try and do what we want to do instead of giving Dallas the ball with all the emotion of the start of a playoff game, and God forbid they hit a big play on us, and all of a sudden before we touch the ball, we're down and the crowd is going nuts and into it. Let's try and take them out of it right away. Their plan in the beginning couldn't have worked more to a T of what they were doing. They win the toss, take the ball, 12 plays, 75 yards, taking up almost 8 minutes off the clock, scoring a touchdown. Of those 12 plays, 8 were run, 7 by Aaron Jones. Mike, you can't draw up a beginning of a game plan any better than that of setting the tone on the road of what you wanted to do. I was just so impressed with that. And then we started talking about, okay, what happens at halftime? It's 27-7, and again, my partner, Ryan Radke, says, what's going on in the locker room right now? I said, well, in the Packer locker room, it's simple. Do not rest easy. This team has big play capability, even though they haven't shown it yet. They can get themselves back into this game. You got to play it, you got to play it like the old adage 0-0. And on the Cowboys side, it was going to be twofold. There was probably some players in there breaking lockers, throwing helmets, losing their minds at how bad they were playing, and others saying, listen, we scored right at the end of the half. We got our 7 points. We get the ball to start the third quarter. Let's collect ourselves and say, let's get ourselves back in this starting the third quarter. So I think you had two sides of it, two different type of player in that Cowboy locker room on what was going on, the disbelief and the anger to what just happened. And okay, but we scored at the end of the half. We made it a 20-point game, and we get the ball. So, and then they come out, you think about it in the second half, they come out, go down and score a field goal. And then they're like, okay, at least they scored. How does Green Bay answer? Touchdown. Then Cowboys get the ball. They go down and score a touchdown. How does Green Bay have to answer that? Touchdown. So while the Cowboys did come out in their first 2 drives, scored 10 points, Green Bay scored 14 in there. So they just had an answer for everything and just frustrated the hell out of the Cowboys. Dak looked uncomfortable. He and CeeDee Lamb could not have been more not on the same page in this game than I've seen in a long time. But this a lot, and I know people are going to talk about the Cowboys. They always fold in the playoffs. But, man, I give a lot of credit to Green Bay and what they did on both sides of the ball.
Yeah, you mentioned it before. The Green Bay defense, the most surprising part to me, just what they've been all year, as inconsistent as they've been for so much of the year, and looked at as the Achilles heel. Matt LaFleur also, again, we cannot give this dude enough credit for absolutely carving up Dan Quinn's unit on defense. And it's tough when your foundation is you don't have the dogs to hunt and stop the run game because everything else can get built off that. But, Dad, they picked them apart with motion, all the stuff pre and post snap there. Yes. They took the Dallas Cowboys man coverage and absolutely made it look silly on the back end. It's always like I had a buddy of mine who used to say, yeah, I make up for being pretty small by also being pretty slow. The Dallas Cowboys defense made up for gaping holes in the run game by also having giant holes in the back on the pass defense when it came to some of these deep shots in the game. There was no way that they could win because the foundation was broken against a team on the other side that had found its final form.
There and Dan Quinn, who, by the way, has had a couple of interviews already or has him getting ready to be a head coach somewhere, they play man more than anybody in the league. And first they were getting beat by man, but then when they played zone, my God, Jordan Love had some time, and Romeo Doubs was killing them in the middle of the field, the deep middle of the field, with the space that was available in the coverage. It was stunning. 3 times they got him there. Then you got Luke Musgrave on one of those, send all the receivers to the left and just have Luke run a deep, over route coming from the left to the right. And they just blew the coverage, and he's wide open, actually having to wait for the football like a punt before he gets into the end zone. Yeah, it was, you wondered after that game, first and foremost, is Mike McCarthy going to have a job? But then you started to wonder, will this affect Dan Quinn in people looking at him for a head coach of the way his defense just got decimated out there? But as I said, he's had a couple of interviews. He's going to have more. So we'll see what other kind of changes are made to this team and this coaching staff.
Speaking of Dan Quinn, who is a former head coach, most notably with the Atlanta Falcons, that team made news. I've enjoyed, in a day and age where especially websites like On3 have become pretty famous for all these big, ornate recruiting graphics. Every time a player commits or goes on a visit somewhere, we see that pop up. The NFL teams, and I don't know when this started or if I'm just aware of it now because I'm terminally online, have started doing the graphics for such and such team has interviewed this coach. We saw the Chargers rattling through them all the other day, and we saw the headline heard round the world. The Atlanta Falcons have interviewed head coach Bill Belichick for the possibility of filling that role. And, Dad, you can imagine all of the 28-3 memes that came through on that. What does an interview with Bill Belichick even look like at this point?
Do you want the job? Here's a blank check.
Yeah.
Because you hear these interviews, sometimes they're 6, 8, 10 hours, right? And I would imagine that's mostly with coordinators trying to be first-time head coaches. And by the way, about that, the owner, Arthur Blank, has never hired a non-first-time head coach. He has always hired that first-time, that coordinator becoming a first-time head coach. You're going from that to the second oldest coach and the GOAT coach who's walking into the Hall of Fame. I'm with you. What is that interview like? I mean, and who's conducting the interview, right? Is it the Falcons or is it Bill Belichick? Because this is and I'm being facetious there, they're obviously interviewing Bill, because I think Bill's the sixth person that they've interviewed. But I have to imagine that interview has to be so different than any other head coach prospect that interviews for them.
Do you think someone brought up the game, like just to break the ice?
Yes.
Like
you
someone
have
had to mention it, right?
Of course you do.
Like you got to address the 28-3 sized elephant in the room. It can't go unspoken that entire time.
And the people on Twitter who have been responding underneath, by the way, the Falcons tweeting out that they interviewed Bill Belichick, it was like, I heard he wants $28.3 million next year. The tweets just keep coming.
The interview lasted between 3 and 28 minutes. It was all there. It was
all
incredibly giving.
Yeah.
Oh, that was, but some of them, Mike, you mentioned the Ben Affleck movie of Good Will Hunting.
Popping in, retainer.
Kicking the feet up on the desk,
It is fascinating to think. It is funny, too, because when you think about the actual viability of this, for the Falcons, what do they have? A defense that ended up becoming the star of the show this season, a bunch of young offensive skill talent, I think a pretty good run-blocking offensive line on their best day. But your worst nightmare, unless you've got a plan for addressing it this offseason, is Bill Belichick without an answer at quarterback.
Here's what seems odd to me, and it's just because, obviously, of what Bill has done. It just seems like a team would say, that's Bill Belichick. We want him. Let's go hire him, and not have him be one of 6 or 7 candidates that we interviewed. Because imagine if they don't hire him, they would pick maybe a first-time head coach or someone who's been a head coach for a short time over Bill Belichick. It just seems weird. I get the process, but it just seems weird. You wouldn't just say, oh, that's Bill. We want to hire you as our head coach.
All right, since it was an extended wild card weekend, we'll call this Victory Tuesday, which means we got to get some winners in here. And no one better to bring on for that than our friend of the program here, Lions fullback Jason Cabinda, kind enough to join us now. Jason, congratulations, man. Take us inside what I have to imagine was one of the happiest places on earth, ending a 32-year playoff drought this weekend for you.
Yeah, man, I had a friend fly in for the game, and he grew up in Michigan. And, he literally told me, he said, bro, I've literally been waiting my entire life for this. And I think when he told me that's when it really hit, because that was the energy of the fans the entire game. I mean, it was a bunch of people in there who had literally been waiting their entire life for it. So you can only imagine the energy. I mean, it was absolutely electric. I mean, one of the greatest days, man. It was truly special.
And I guess, is there a way to put that in perspective? You're 27 years old. You play football for a living. You go and you play a game. This is your job. This is what you do. But to see the fans and how it's their life, I mean, how they talk about it, they haven't seen it in so long. I mean, how was just that and walking around that stadium and seeing those fans like that?
I mean, the Detroit Lion fans, they are the absolute best. I mean, they have stuck by us, as you know, through thick and thin. I mean, there's no question about it. They are diehard. The city's been dying for a winner for so long, and to see the change, the 360 over these past 5 years, especially over these last 3 that Dan has been here and what he's instilled in us, and the inspiration and how much the culture has changed in this building. I mean, it's been really, really fantastic and cool to see, especially being how long I've been here on this team and here in Detroit.
You mentioned the culmination of Dan's time here. You guys were so close to the postseason last year, getting over the hump this year. How did he address this with you guys in the lead up to this game?
I think for us, it was really just about being who we've been all season. I mean, we've been preparing the same way week in and week out. We know the work it takes and what we need to put in each week in order to come out as a winner. And I think when you have a game like this with all these storylines and narratives and all this stuff going on, a lot of outside noise and the media, I think that's when you really got to just bring it in and just make it about us, make it about executing your job, making it about your brothers, making it about the coaches, everybody in the building who, really deserves this win, and kind of working for each other and going out there and giving it your all for each other. And that was kind of, Dan's big message was to just be us. And you don't got to go out there and do anything special. You don't got to go outside the game plan and, try to go out there and make stuff happen. Let the plays come to you, prepare the same way, play the same way that you've been playing all year. And, everything else will take care of itself. And it did.
So you have from the fans the high of decades of waiting, from the players of the fact that all your hard work led to a home playoff game and a playoff win. How quickly does that high get put aside, knowing, okay, it's nice we won that, but the job's not over?
Yeah, I think, Panay kind of said it best. He said, now that we're in, it's time to kick the door down. And that's really how we feel. The job's not finished, like you said. We expect a lot out of this team. We know the goals that we have and where we want to go. And at the end of the day, this is just another week, another chance another opportunity to keep this team together for another week, go out there, win and have fun, and keep having a run for this city that truly deserves it. I think that's what everybody's thinking about right now, man. We're just thinking about the city of Detroit, how bad they want a winner, how bad we want it in the building, and we want it for Dan. So we're super excited for another opportunity and super grateful for it.
What was Dan like after the game? I'd imagine he was just stone colding beers in the locker room there. Like, what was that reaction from him?
I mean, Dan's reaction was awesome. I mean, I think he does a pretty good job of keeping his cool, but I think there's no doubt that, when we got in the locker room, we knew it was like a massive monkey being off your back, That's really how it felt. And, I think that really freed the chains for this organization and for the mindset of the organization and for the, overall outlook of what people think of this team and this city. So, you guys talk about Dan's reaction. I know there's a video floating around of Brad Holmes in the elevator as he's about to come down to the locker room, and Brad's just over there screaming. He's like, yeah. I mean, he gets to the locker room, and Brad's like out of breath, and everybody's just looking at Brad laughing because you could just see the excitement and the energy. You don't really get to see that type of energy from a GM. So I think we have a really special environment. We got some special coaches, man. I think we're just doing it the right way. And, Dan even said that in his post-game speech. He's like, man, this isn't always the best business. It can be a crappy business sometimes. But, hey, I really genuinely feel like we do a damn good job over here. And I couldn't agree with him more.
Speaking of that tough part of the business, I think the quarterback matchup in this game was really emblematic of the guy in Matt Stafford, who was a part of a lot of the lean years in Detroit, coming back. Jared is a cast-off from that Rams team. How did you guys kind of manage that, as I'm sure Matthew's a guy that's pretty well liked by some of the core members of that locker room that were around for a lot of that and saw it with him? Yeah, no doubt about it. And, I obviously played with Staff. Staff is a part of my, personal football history. I caught my first catch in the NFL from Stafford. But I think for us as players, like I said, it was about us in the locker room. It was about getting this win for Jared. We knew how much this win meant for Jared. He had a tough situation to deal with that wasn't necessarily handled the best way. And, you can call it somewhat of a revenge game or whatever you want to call it. But I know Jared had a lot of pressure, and he did a really good job of dealing with his emotions throughout the week and just continuing to be the same guy, not trying to do too much, preparing the same way. And I think that's really a testament to what kind of guy he is, what kind of leader we have in Dan to be able to keep us in that mindset and not let those narratives or, those outside noise, those things, influence in any type of ways.
So you host Tampa Bay Sunday, and it's early in the week, so I'm not worried about the game plan part right now. But like Tampa Bay played Philly in week 3 and lost to them 25-11, and then beat them, yesterday in the playoffs. You guys played Tampa week 5 and beat them 20-6. My overall question is, does an early game like that mean anything in a later game like this? What can you take away from that game, if anything?
To me, it doesn't. I think in the league, in the NFL, every single week you're trying to get better. Teams are getting better throughout the year. You want to get to a point where your team is peaking in December and playing its best football in December. And I think Tampa Bay has done a good job down the stretch of kind of figuring out who they are, gaining that confidence and stuff of that nature. So at the end of the day, they're a better team. We are a better team. The margin of error is smaller because we're in the playoffs. It's good on good. It's best on best. So all the details matter the more, at this point in time. So although it's good that we've seen them already and we're familiar with that team and because of the fact that we played them, but at the end of the day, you got to see what's recent, what they've done over the past stretch, 3-4 games, and obviously this game yesterday, and kind of go off of what they're showing now, which shows that they're a better team,
Jason, about a minute left here. You mentioned the details matter. I'm curious for you. You mentioned catching your first pass from Stafford. There's the image in this game on the touchdown to Sam Laporta. All you big skill guys lined up on the outside there. You little tick that ball couldn't have come your way. I feel like Sam gets a lot of touchdown balls. Could they not have shown you some love as a big guy split out there?
I ran a fade, man. I was trying to get open, man. If it wasn't there, I was ready to come back to the pylon and get a ball from Jared. But I think that's just a testament to Ben Johnson that he could go out there, throw out a jumbo O-lineman, 2 tight ends and a fullback, and run a pass play. I think being able to use personnel against our opponents, Ben Johnson has just been masterful at that this year. And you see it week in and week out of the play calling and the play designs and just the overall scheme that Ben has us in.
Well, I saw what you're saying there. If he had to roll out at all, you were in great position to just come right back to that front pylon and Goff just whip it to you. That would have been nice.
I was waiting
listen, man, you don't got to get ready when you stay ready. And Jason, Lord knows we know you do. So congratulations on the win, man. We're excited for you. We appreciate you giving us so much time this year. Best of luck, man, and hopefully we'll get to talk to you guys again after another big-time game from the Lions.
No doubt. I appreciate you guys, as always.
Thanks, man.
Awesome stuff again. Lions fullback Jason Cabinda, kind enough to join us. Coming off their win, we're now dead again for the first time in franchise history. They will get to host 2 playoff games, getting another one at Ford Field with Tampa coming to town, like you mentioned.
I just can't even fathom the fans who had been, especially the older fans who had been there for decades and had kids who they brought up as Lion fans as well, waiting, and now having this to cheer for. These players have made these fans feel so good.
All right, guys, time to finish off the show the way we always do. This, that, the third, 3 quick stories to send you off into the rest of your day. As always, make sure you download, subscribe, rate, review us. Try and check us out live 8 to 10 a.m. Eastern, Monday through Friday here on DraftKingsNetwork.com, the YouTube channel, Samsung TV Plus, Roku, and more. But if you miss us or any of our great guests like Lions fullback Jason Cabinda, who was kind enough to join us coming off their win, you can get that wherever you get your podcast or available right here on YouTube immediately after the show. Let's get to this guy's Hulk Hogan. Apparently out here doing some saving. Hulk Hogan's wife, Sky Daly, posted last night that after they left a dinner in Tampa, they saw a car flip over in front of them, and Hulk Hogan, her husband, went out, sprung to action, puncturing the woman's airbags and quickly getting her out of the car. By all appearances, she was unscathed, just rattled, but... Dad, Hulk Hogan wearing his NWO shirt, by the way, just immediately ready to go and play hero ball.
Yeah, NWO shirt out at dinner, you know, being Hulk Hogan as he is. Pretty wild. And getting there to help. That's very, very cool. I mean, you know, people will stop and help other people, but when it's someone like that, obviously, you know, Jordan Love, you know, the last week helped somebody, you know, a young lady get out of a snowbank, or tried to. It turns out as Jordan Love was trying to push the car out, did it like once or twice, and she was like, "Dude, you got a game coming up. I have friends coming. Stop doing this." But I have to say, I had an experience like this when I was playing for the Eagles. Is even for home games, you stay in a hotel the night before, and I'm one of those 1 o'clock game. You got to be at the stadium by 11, and while after pregame breakfast in the morning, offensive linemen go right to the stadium. I was one of those, I didn't want to step foot in the locker room until the last possible minute. So after breakfast at 7 or so in the morning, I would drive home. Go home, Mike, to see your mother, and at some point you guys as well, before I went to the stadium. And I was driving home early in the morning after pregame, and probably about 15 minutes from home on the highway, a car changed lanes and clipped the back end of another car. And that car went off into the median on the highway, that big grass area, and flipped a couple of times, probably about 50 yards, 100 yards ahead of me. So as it was doing that, I'm like, oh, my God. So I pulled over and tried to get as close as I could. The car ended up on all 4 wheels. I got out of the car, and I happened to be the first one there because I was just in the position where I was the closest one to him. And I ran to the car. Because the car had flipped, the windows had blown out of it. So there were no windows, and I'm running, and I'm looking at the driver's side facing me, and I'm thinking the guy's head is to the side. I'm like, oh, my God, you know, this guy's going to be dead. And I go there, and I just reach in and touch his shoulder. I didn't want to move him or anything. And his head turns around, looks at me, and he goes, Mike Golic. He goes, I got tickets to the game today.
No.
I'm like, dude, just hold on, bud. Just stay right there. Stay right there, you know, and I'd stay with him for a little bit. Obviously, other cars came at that point pretty quickly, and I ended up having to leave, but he was fine. I don't know if he ever made it to the game or not, but dude was fine. I was like, wow, I mean, nothing. Unscathed, completely unscathed.
You didn't, upgrade him to suite tickets or get him down on the field before the game after he survives this harrowing experience?
Well, we don't know that he survived.
Do you think I had the pull to get anybody suite tickets?
That's a fair point. Hey, go ahead. At least he recognized you. That's a win. That's a nice ego boost.
Yeah.
Hilarious. Just hilarious. I mean, wow. I couldn't help but laugh. And then I was praying the dude was okay and didn't have, you know, some part of the car stuck into his gut or anything, you know. He was fine.
Yeah. All right, there we go. All's well that ends well. So good job by you. Good job by Hulk Hogan, which, you know, is a fun thing to get to say. Jesse, let's get to more good job getting handed out as the Emmys were last night in the world of television. And we had some folks absolutely clean up.
Yeah, there's usually like a couple shows that just sweep. And it was Succession, Beef, and The Bear. So it looks like Succession had 6 Emmys. Beef had 5. The Bear had 6. So they just went through absolutely cleaning up. And then we got a really funny visual from Rob McElhenney. He's watching the game, the Eagles game of, you know, he's of It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia fame. He's watching the Eagles game on his phone at the Emmys. Dead serious. So serious watching the game. And he's like, who schedules the Emmys on the same night? And you just have to laugh. Have you guys ever been in this situation where you had to attend an event like a wedding or something like that, and there's a game you needed to watch that was on?
Yep.
Okay, so you just do that?
Yeah.
You pull the phone out?
Well, see, I think, like, it's mostly been a wedding because you're like, who the hell schedules a wedding during football season?
Yeah.
The best thing the bride and groom can do is because it's usually not affecting the wedding. I guess it's if it's a Saturday or Sunday, depending on playoffs. But have a TV at the reception. Have something where people can watch because they're going to watch. You know, you can try and sit there and say, we're not putting up a TV because we want people involved in our reception. Well, they're going to do just what Rob did. They're going to have their phones and they're going to find a place to watch it. That's just what comes along with having your wedding during football season.
Yeah, that would be smart.
Cost of doing business. Cost of doing business.
Put it up.
Congratulations. I mean, Succession, obviously super deserving of everything. Kieran Culkin,
huge.
best male lead. Sarah Snook, best female lead. Shiv forever. The Bear was an absolute juggernaut. And this was season 1 because of the writer's strike. This isn't even season 2 of The Bear with some of the best episodes of TV from the last few years. Beef I need to check out. But, Dad, I felt in a big way for Bob Odenkirk. Bob Odenkirk, star of, obviously before Breaking Bad, played Saul Goodman in that show, but Better Call Saul had been a triumph. Every bit of Breaking Bad's equal by a lot of people's estimations, and some people even liked it better, and yet they set the record last night officially for the most Emmy nominations at 53 for a show without a win, which felt like a crime considering the job everyone on that show did.
I am stunned, absolutely stunned, because you don't hear about all that kind of stuff until it happens that many times. It reminds me of people around my age. Susan Lucci from All My Children was always finishing second as, the best actress, always second. She finally won one, but just years and years and years, and you just wonder when that's gonna break. But I can't believe that. I can't believe he hasn't won an award. That blows my mind and tells you it's ridiculous. But The Bear, congrats to that show. That show is phenomenal. I love that show.
Absolutely incredible. But for Bob Odenkirk and for Rhea Seehorn, who played Kim Wexler on the show, who was an absolute beast, their all-time TV performances just came up in the wrong era, which we see happen in sports all the time. Jesse, what we don't see all the time are births at Disney World, but apparently now that's rumored to be a thing that's on the table.
We don't know if this is fake or real, but the New York Post is basically saying there's a rumor that there's going to be a Disney maternity ward. It's an Instagram account called Mousetrap News came up with this wild story about the company letting people have babies at the Magic Kingdom maternity ward, or the original video has over 1 million views. Disney fans are freaking out over this. So this could be satire, but I think the real story becomes how many people are so interested in doing this, how many Disney adults there are out there walking among us.
Oh, I mean, Dad, there's no doubt that there's a market for this kind of stuff. Now, according to the rumors, it would unsurprisingly be severely marked up, $5,000 for a stay, which is almost twice the cost of a normal stay. You would have to have a valid Disney park ticket, which is hilarious. No word on if you need the fast pass or not, but people are going to sign up for this if this was a real thing. They might be trial ballooning this.
I'm sure moms would love the fast pass to have a quicker birth. But Jesse, let me ask you. Let's get past let's just say you wanted to have a baby in this situation.
Okay.
The biggest question is, which character would you want delivering your baby?
Yeah, I feel like that's a terrifying question, and it's a scary. It's a scary thing to even think of. I'm not terribly familiar with. Like, I know Disney movies. I'm not, terribly familiar with, the canon characters. I don't know. Probably one of the dudes from Toy Story. I don't know. I was just
going to say, Woody and Buzz seemed like a great tag team. The problem is, if you're in the room, technically they can't animate then, so I don't know if they'd be able to do the job or how that would work. Dad, do you have a pick that comes to mind?
Probably Goofy. Yeah, I would think that would fit well. It would be Goofy. I think that would fit the context pretty well.
Yeah.
Yeah, that would be an appropriate.
Not one of the princesses.
For your sister.
Not one of the princesses. They definitely did not. They do not have the skills.
No. But Goofy does.
I would trust Goofy more than one of those princesses. Okay.
If you trust Goofy, you probably trust this show. Download, subscribe, rate, review it. Leave it a 5-star rating. Thanks so much. We'll talk to you guys tomorrow.